And joining us now from Philadelphia is prominent Middle East historian Dr. Daniel Pipes, whose new book, Israel Victory: How Zionists Win Acceptance and Palestinians Get Liberated, offers a detailed roadmap on how Israel can win the war. Dr. Pipes, the IDF spokesman, commented that Hamas is an ideology, an idea that will not disappear or be fully eliminated. Do you agree with him, or is there a way to win the war total victory?
There's no question that Hamas represents something larger than itself. It is part of the Islamist movement, whose origins go back centuries and whose modern phenomenon began about a century ago. It's big. It's in Iran, it's ISIS, it's all over. That said, I believe that the Islamist ideology in the Middle East has been in decline for about a decade. There are lots of reasons to think this. And the shattering of the Hamas pseudo-government in Gaza and the capture of its leaders will be a major blow to Hamas. No, it won't disappear entirely, but it will be much weakened if the Israelis do the right thing.
Doctor, I just want to skip over to another issue that troubles many in Israel. There are reports that the U.S. is withholding arms that Israel needs to fight the war in Gaza. In your assessment, has the Biden administration been doing all in its power to assist Israel's war effort?
Definitely not. The Biden administration suffers from an internal contradiction. On the one hand, there is the president himself and probably most of his senior advisors who have a sympathy for Israel, who understood the nature of October 7th, and who are concerned about Israel's long-term security. However, there is also in the Democratic Party an element that is vociferously anti-Zionist, toxically anti-Zionist, and that wants to support Hamas. The president is running for re-election in, 5 months, and he needs their support. So he is trying, on the one hand, to help Israel, on the other hand, to appease his left wing. This leads to contradictions, and it leads to what I call an oxymoronic policy, where the president does two things at once. By no means is it full-fledged support. On the other hand, it's by no means opposition. It is a perpetually self-contradictory, inconsistent policy that Israel just must deal with and understand and make the best of.
I suppose it may not be a good idea to have an open confrontation that the public knows about and is talking about. Let me ask you this. There's been much criticism about the lack of a post-war plan for Gaza and the Palestinians by Israel, by our government. Should that have already been done already? There are reports, for example, that Egypt and others are ready to join a multinational Arab force in Gaza with U.S. backing. Is that likely to emerge?
I think there have been a substantial number of hints by the Prime Minister of Israel and others indicating what they see for the future. However, they have not made this into a formal plan and have not committed to it entirely. So yes, I completely agree. A vision of what comes after is urgent and must be a high priority. It's unfortunate that the government of Israel has not made these decisions and made them public.
Is it too late to come up with a plan now?
The sooner the better. By the way, I talked about a self-contradictory American policy. There's also a self-contradictory Israeli policy. On the one hand, the government of Israel says we'll do everything necessary to get back the hostages, including negotiating with Hamas. On the other hand, it says repeatedly, we will destroy Hamas. Well, you can't do both at once. You can't negotiate and destroy Hamas at the same time, one or the other. And so the Israeli government has followed an inconsistent policy as well. I wish, in both cases, the American and the Israeli policies would opt for the right policy and stick with it, but it hasn't happened, not about to happen.
Dr. Pipes, I know that you're an historian and not a prophet, but if you could offer an opinion, how will the October 7th attack and the Israeli response be remembered as a moment in Israeli history and the Jewish people's history?
I think it will be seen as the culmination of the failure of Israel's security establishment. The security establishment has an extraordinarily high reputation, and it's deserved in the sense that from the beginnings of Zionism through the Israeli War of Independence and the Six-Day War, using meager means, the Zionists and then the Shuv, Israel managed extraordinary victories against their many enemies, armies, powerful enemies, Soviet Union behind them. All this was extraordinary. But for the past 50 years, one sees an Israeli security establishment, with exceptions, Entebbe, the theft of the Iranian documents, with exceptions, has fared very poorly. 1973 was a failure. The Oslo Accords were a failure. The retreat from Gaza in 2005 was a failure. And October 7th was the greatest failure, the most obvious failure of them all. So what I think this is a kick in the pants of the Israeli security establishment that it needs to wake up and change. It's not the great hero of the old days. It is a failure, and it must change its ways profoundly.
Dr. Pipes, it's been a real pleasure for me to have your insights. Thanks so much for being with us at ILTV.
Thank you for inviting me.